Trump just issued a bold threat to Ford, and it has everyone asking, what's next for American jobs, innovation, and the cars we drive? Ford's plans to expand its production overseas have pushed Trump to his limit. His response? A fiery warning that's shaking the automotive industry to its core. This isn't just politics, it's personal for workers, businesses, and even consumers like you. Why is Trump targeting Ford so aggressively? What does this mean for the future of American manufacturing? And how will it impact your wallet and your choices? Stick around, this is worse than you think. What's happening? Ford Motor Company has always been synonymous with American ingenuity, a symbol of grit and determination that once represented the very best of US manufacturing. But in a move that stunned the nation, Ford announced a significant shift in its strategy. The company plans to move a large portion of its electric vehicle production overseas. What seemed like an ordinary corporate update quickly spiraled into a storm of controversy. Why? Because this decision wasn't just about business. It was seen as a direct challenge to Donald Trump's America First policies. Ford framed the move as part of its commitment to sustainability and global competitiveness. But to Trump and his supporters, it felt like betrayal. For decades, Ford had stood as a pillar of American industry, creating jobs and fueling local economies. Now, its decision to prioritize international production over domestic operations seemed to spit in the face of everything Trump had been fighting for. This was no mere press release. It was a declaration of independence, and the fallout was immediate. The brewing tension. The seeds of this controversy were sown long before Ford's announcement. Trump's administration had imposed tariffs on imported materials like steel, aluminum, lithium, and cobalt, essential components for modern vehicles, especially electric ones. While the goal was to encourage domestic production and protect American jobs, the unintended consequence was a significant increase in manufacturing costs for companies like Ford. Caught between rising costs and an increasingly competitive market, Ford found itself at a crossroads. The global demand for electric vehicles was skyrocketing, with competitors like Tesla and Hyundai racing ahead in innovation and affordability. To stay relevant, Ford needed to act fast, and its leadership decided that expanding production to regions with lower costs and more accessible supply chains was the only viable option. Yet, this decision was about more than just logistics. It was a calculated move to establish Ford as a leader in the electric vehicle market. By ramping up production in Europe and Asia, regions investing heavily in green technology, Ford aimed to position itself at the forefront of the global sustainability movement. But what the company saw as a necessary step forward, many Americans viewed as a retreat, a corporate betrayal. When news of Ford's plans broke, Donald Trump wasted no time responding. In a fiery rally held just days after the announcement, he accused the company of turning its back on the American worker. Ford was built by Americans for Americans, he thundered, and now they're shipping your jobs overseas while you're left to pick up the pieces. Trump's rhetoric wasn't just about Ford, it was a rallying cry for his broader economic nationalist agenda. By framing the automaker's decision as a betrayal, he sought to reignite the passion of his supporters and underscore the importance of his America First policies. And his words struck a chord. Across the nation, factory workers, small business owners, and everyday consumers voiced their anger, questioning whether Ford still deserved its place as an American icon. But Ford wasn't about to back down. The company's leadership issued a statement defending their decision, emphasizing their continued commitment to American jobs. They pointed to ongoing investments in domestic electric vehicle plants, including billions of dollars allocated for facilities in Michigan and Kentucky. This isn't about leaving America behind, Ford's chief executive officer James Farley declared in a televised interview. It's about securing our future in a rapidly changing world. Ford's justification. Ford's defense hinged on one key argument: survival. The automotive industry is undergoing a seismic shift, with electric vehicles poised to dominate the market within the next decade. Staying competitive in this landscape requires more than just innovation. It demands a global approach. By expanding production overseas, Ford argued that it could reduce costs, access critical resources more efficiently, and bring cutting-edge electric vehicles to market faster. At the same time, the company highlighted its efforts to support American workers and communities. Ford pledged to create thousands of new jobs through its investments in US-based electric vehicle infrastructure. They also announced plans to collaborate with local suppliers to strengthen domestic supply chains. For Ford, this was about finding a balance between global competitiveness and national loyalty. Yet, despite these assurances, the backlash continued to grow. Trump's accusations of betrayal resonated with a public already skeptical of corporate motives. For many, Ford's move felt like a rejection of the very values that had made it a household name. And as the controversy deepened, it became clear that this was just the beginning of a much larger battle, one that would test not only Ford's resolve, but the future of American manufacturing itself. Ford's announcement was more than just a business decision. It was a bold declaration that signaled the beginning of a high-stakes showdown. With Trump vowing to fight back and Ford standing firm in its strategy, the stage was set for a clash that would resonate far beyond the automotive industry. The question now wasn't just about who would win this battle, but what the outcome would mean for American jobs, industry, and the country's place in a rapidly globalizing world. What happens when tradition collides with progress? As the dust began to settle on Ford's bombshell announcement, one thing was clear: the fight was far from over. A clash of philosophies. At the heart of the Ford-Trump conflict lies a philosophical divide that encapsulates a broader national debate: the tension between economic nationalism and globalization. Donald Trump's America First policies were designed to reinvigorate domestic manufacturing, reduce dependence on international supply chains, and protect American jobs. By imposing tariffs and promoting the slogan, "Buy American, Hire American," Trump sought to prioritize national interest over global integration. Ford, on the other hand, operates in a fiercely competitive global marketplace where survival often hinges on the ability to adapt quickly to changing dynamics. For decades, the company balanced its identity as an American icon with its need to compete internationally. But the transition to electric vehicles, combined with rising production costs due to tariffs, forced Ford to make a choice: stay tethered to a purely domestic approach or embrace globalization to remain competitive. This decision was not made lightly. Ford's leadership understood the symbolic weight of their brand, a name that has long represented the resilience and ingenuity of American manufacturing. But they also recognize the stark realities of the modern automotive industry. The future is electric, and producing electric vehicles requires access to a complex global network of resources, technologies, and markets. The cost of staying local. Electric vehicles, hailed as the future of transportation, depend on critical components like lithium-ion batteries. These batteries are constructed using rare minerals such as lithium, cobalt, and nickel, which are primarily mined and processed overseas. For automakers like Ford, accessing these materials is not just a logistical challenge, it's a strategic imperative. However, Trump's tariffs on imported materials significantly increased costs for companies relying on these global supply chains. For Ford, the math was unforgiving. Building electric vehicles domestically meant navigating higher material costs, supply chain bottlenecks, and insufficient infrastructure for battery production in the United States. While government incentives for domestic electric vehicle production provided some relief, they were not enough to offset the financial strain. Expanding production to regions with established supply chains and lower costs became an unavoidable reality. Yet, Ford's decision to move some of its electric vehicle production overseas did not sit well with Trump or his supporters. For them, the move symbolized a betrayal of the America First ethos, a decision to prioritize profits over patriotism. But for Ford, it was a question of survival. The company argued that without this strategic shift, it would struggle to compete with rivals like Tesla and Hyundai, which had already established strong footholds in the electric vehicle market. Ford's global strategy. Ford's move to expand electric vehicle production overseas was not a retreat from its American roots, but rather a calculated step to secure its future in a rapidly evolving industry. By establishing manufacturing facilities in regions like Europe and Asia, Ford aimed to achieve several critical objectives. First, producing electric vehicles closer to key markets allows Ford to reduce transportation costs and improve supply chain efficiency. This is particularly important in regions like Europe, where governments are aggressively promoting electric vehicle adoption through incentives and strict emissions regulations. By positioning itself as a local player in these markets, Ford can better cater to consumer demands and regulatory requirements. Second, overseas production enables Ford to access advanced technologies and expertise. Countries like Germany and South Korea have invested heavily in electric vehicle research and development, creating ecosystems that foster innovation. By collaborating with local partners and leveraging these resources, Ford can accelerate its transition to electric vehicles and maintain its competitive edge. A rallying cry for economic nationalism. Donald Trump wasted no time capitalizing on Ford's announcement. In speeches, rallies, and media appearances, he framed the company's decision as a direct attack on American workers and values. Ford is not just a company, Trump declared at a rally in Michigan. It's an American institution, and now they're turning their backs on the very people who made them great. Trump's rhetoric struck a chord with many Americans, particularly those in regions hit hardest by deindustrialization and job losses. In states like Michigan and Ohio, where Ford's factories are economic lifelines, the announcement sparked fear and anger. Workers worried about potential layoffs, while small business owners braced for the ripple effects on their communities. But Trump's response was not just about Ford. It was part of a broader narrative he had championed throughout his political career. By criticizing Ford, Trump reinforced his commitment to protecting American jobs and industries, positioning himself as a defender of the working class against what he called corporate greed and globalist agendas. However, critics argued that Trump's policies were partly to blame for the very challenges Ford faced. Tariffs on imported materials had driven up production costs, making it more difficult for companies to manufacture electric vehicles domestically. Moreover, a lack of federal investment in critical infrastructure for electric vehicle production left automakers like Ford at a disadvantage compared to competitors in regions with more supportive policies. The stakes for Ford's legacy. For Ford, the stakes extended far beyond its immediate business decisions. This conflict threatened to reshape the company's identity and its relationship with American consumers. For over a century, Ford had been synonymous with American innovation and resilience. The Model T revolutionized transportation, while the F-Series trucks became a symbol of hard work and dependability. But the transition to electric vehicles marked a turning point for the company. As the automotive industry undergoes a seismic shift, Ford must navigate the delicate balance between preserving its heritage and embracing the future. This requires not only adapting to new technologies, but also managing the expectations of a public that holds the company to a higher standard as a symbol of American industry. Ford's leadership understood the gravity of this moment. Chief Executive Officer James Farley emphasized the company's commitment to American workers and communities, pointing to ongoing investments in domestic manufacturing. At the same time, he defended the decision to expand overseas as a necessary step to remain competitive in a global market. The cultural divide. The Ford-Trump conflict highlighted a growing cultural divide in the United States. On one side were those who viewed Ford's decision as a betrayal of American values, a symbol of corporate greed and disloyalty. On the other were those who saw it as a pragmatic response to the realities of a globalized economy. This divide was particularly pronounced in regions where Ford's factories are deeply ingrained in the local culture. In towns like Dearborn, Michigan, Ford is more than just an employer. It's a source of pride and identity. For residents, the idea of Ford moving production overseas felt like a personal affront, a rejection of the community that had supported the company for generations. But for others, the decision represented progress. Environmentalists praised Ford's commitment to electric vehicles and sustainability, arguing that the company's actions were necessary to combat climate change and secure a greener future. The bigger picture. As the conflict between Ford and Trump escalated, it became clear that this was more than just a corporate dispute. It was a reflection of broader debates about the future of American industry, the role of government in shaping economic policy. For Ford, the road ahead is fraught with challenges. The company must navigate a rapidly changing industry, manage public perception, and balance competing priorities in a global marketplace. For Trump, the conflict is an opportunity to rally his base and reinforce his vision of economic nationalism. But for the American public, the stakes are even higher. The outcome of this conflict will not only shape the future of Ford and the automotive industry, it will also influence the trajectory of the US economy and the lives of workers across the nation. In a world where change is the only constant, the choices made today will echo for generations to come. Trump's fiery counterattack. Donald Trump, never one to back away from a confrontation, responded to Ford's announcement with characteristic ferocity. His rhetoric was not merely criticism, it was a full-scale attack. Speaking at a rally in Ohio, a state deeply intertwined with the automotive industry, Trump declared, "Ford has turned its back on the American worker. They've decided global profits are worth more than the hardworking men and women who built this country." The crowd roared in agreement, echoing a sentiment that resonated with many Americans. Trump's speech was filled with sharp sharp rebukes and promises to hold Ford accountable. He painted the company's decision as emblematic of a larger betrayal by corporations, accusing them of abandoning the very people who had made their success possible. Trump's strategy was clear: position himself as the defender of American jobs and industry. But his criticism extended beyond Ford. He used the opportunity to challenge the broader automotive sector, warning other manufacturers against following Ford's example. If they think they can send jobs overseas and get away with it, they're wrong. We're going to make sure they pay, Trump vowed. Ford holds its ground. Ford, however, was prepared for the backlash. In a carefully crafted press release, the company reiterated its commitment to American jobs and innovation. Ford highlighted its substantial investments in electric vehicle plants in Michigan, Tennessee, and Kentucky, emphasizing that the company was creating thousands of jobs and leading the transition to sustainable transportation. James Farley, Ford's chief executive officer, addressed the controversy directly in an interview. "We're not abandoning America," he said firmly. "We're expanding our global footprint to stay competitive in a rapidly changing industry. This is about building a stronger future for Ford and for American manufacturing." Farley's words were measured but resolute. He acknowledged the challenges of balancing global strategy with national loyalty, but maintained that Ford's decision was driven by necessity, not disloyalty. "We're proud of our American roots," he added, "but we also have a responsibility to our shareholders, employees, and customers to ensure Ford remains a leader in the global market." The role of the media. Conservative networks echoed Trump's accusations, portraying Ford's decision as a betrayal of American values. Anchors emphasized the impact on American workers, showcasing interviews with factory employees worried about their jobs and community leaders concerned about economic fallout. Progressive outlets, meanwhile, praised Ford's boldness in embracing sustainability and global competitiveness. They framed the company's decision as a necessary step to address climate change and maintain its relevance in a rapidly evolving industry. Commentators highlighted the challenges of navigating Trump's protectionist policies, arguing that Ford's move was a rational response to an untenable situation. The ripple effects on local communities. As the controversy escalated, the impact on local communities became increasingly apparent. In towns like Dearborn, Michigan, where Ford's presence is deeply ingrained, residents grappled with a mix of emotions. For some, the company's decision felt like a betrayal, a departure from the values that had defined Ford for generations. Small business owners reliant on Ford's factories for their livelihoods voiced concerns about potential job losses and economic uncertainty. "If Ford pulls back here, it's not just the factory workers who will suffer," said a local diner owner. "It's all of us. Restaurants, shops, service providers. This community depends on Ford." But Ford's leadership countered these fears with reassurances. They pointed to ongoing investments in domestic manufacturing and community outreach programs designed to support local economies. "We're not going anywhere," a Ford spokesperson stated. "We're committed to these communities, and we're working to ensure a sustainable future for everyone." The industry watches closely. The Ford-Trump conflict sent shockwaves through the automotive industry, prompting rival manufacturers to closely monitor the situation. General Motors, Ford's longstanding competitor, issued a carefully worded statement emphasizing their commitment to American manufacturing while avoiding direct commentary on the controversy. Similarly, Toyota and Stellantis remained silent, wary of drawing attention to their own global operations. Tesla, however, saw an opportunity. Chief Executive Officer Elon Musk took to social media to tout Tesla's commitment to domestic production, tweeting, "This is why we build here." Musk's remarks fueled speculation about Tesla's strategy, with some interpreting them as a challenge to Ford and other automakers to prioritize American jobs. Political fallout. The political ramifications of the Ford-Trump feud extended far beyond the automotive sector. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle seized the moment to advance their agendas, highlighting the broader implications of the conflict for American industry and economic policy. Trump's allies rallied to his side, calling for punitive measures against companies outsourcing jobs. "We need to send a clear message," one senator declared. "If you're going to operate in America, you need to prioritize American workers." Progressive lawmakers, meanwhile, used the controversy to advocate for increased investment in green technology and domestic infrastructure. "This is a wake-up call," a congresswoman stated. "We need to create an environment where companies like Ford can thrive while staying true to their American roots." A strategic pivot. Amid the growing tension, Ford announced a series of initiatives designed to address the concerns raised by the conflict while reaffirming its commitment to innovation and sustainability. The company unveiled plans for a state-of-the-art research center in Detroit focused on electric vehicle development, emphasizing its dedication to American innovation. Ford also launched a nationwide campaign to engage with its stakeholders, holding town hall meetings in key markets to address concerns and gather feedback. Executives emphasized the company's dual commitment to global competitiveness and domestic investment, highlighting the steps Ford was taking to balance these priorities. Ford is an American company, and we're proud of that, James Farley stated at one such meeting. But we're also a global company, and we have to operate in a global market. Our goal is to find the right balance, to lead the way in sustainability while staying true to our heritage. The turning point. As the dust began to settle, it became clear that the Ford-Trump conflict was more than just a corporate dispute. It was a reflection of broader debates about the future of American industry, the role of government and economic policy, and the values that define the nation. For Ford, the road ahead remained challenging. The company faced the dual task of navigating a rapidly changing industry while managing public perception and political pressure. But Ford's leadership remained resolute, committed to charting a course that balanced innovation with tradition. As the nation watched, one thing was clear: the stakes were high, not just for Ford and Trump, but for the future of American manufacturing itself. The next moves in this high-stakes game would determine not only the outcome of the conflict, but also the trajectory of the industry for years to come. A nation divided. As the Ford-Trump conflict simmered, it became evident that this was more than just a corporate versus political showdown. It represented a deeply divided nation grappling with the complexities of modern economics, environmental responsibilities, and cultural identity. While Ford's decision to expand its electric vehicle production abroad was framed as a business necessity, many Americans saw it as a symbolic departure from the company's storied heritage. For some, the controversy encapsulated the challenges of globalization. How could an iconic American brand balance the need to compete in international markets while preserving its domestic roots? To others, Ford's decision was a betrayal, a clear signal that even the most iconic companies were no longer prioritizing American workers. The tension underscored the delicate tightrope companies must walk in a world where innovation, sustainability, and nationalism collide. The future of American manufacturing. This conflict brought into sharp focus the shifting landscape of American manufacturing. For much of the 20th century, companies like Ford symbolized the ingenuity and strength of the United States. Factories hummed with activity, providing stable jobs and cementing the country's status as an industrial powerhouse. But the 21st century brought new challenges. Global supply chains, environmental imperatives, and rapid technological advancements demanded a different approach. Electric vehicles, once a niche market, had become the focal point of the industry's future. Yet the resources and infrastructure needed to produce them often extended beyond American borders, forcing companies like Ford to make tough decisions. For Ford, this meant embracing a global strategy while emphasizing its investments at home. Critics argued that the company's actions reflected a broader trend of prioritizing profits over patriotism. Supporters countered that these decisions were necessary to ensure long-term competitiveness. The debate highlighted a key question for the nation: could American manufacturing adapt to a changing world while staying true to its roots? Ford's legacy in question, and as Ford worked to rebuild its narrative, the company's legacy hung in the balance. Would it be remembered as a pioneer in sustainable innovation or as a symbol of a divided era in American industry? The steps Ford took in the coming years would not only define its future, but also serve as a case study for other companies facing similar challenges. The company's investments in American-based electric vehicle plants and community programs were efforts to bridge the divide. Yet the road ahead remained uncertain, with competitors like Tesla dominating the domestic market and political rhetoric influencing consumer sentiment. Ford's ability to navigate this high-stakes conflict would be tested. The Ford-Trump saga is more than a story about cars or politics. It's a reflection of a nation at a crossroads. What does this mean for the future of American jobs, innovation, and identity? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Ford's global strategy is a bold step forward or a betrayal of American values? Have you experienced the effects of these changes firsthand? Share your perspective and join the conversation. Your voice matters in shaping the narrative of this pivotal moment.